In the early part of the 21st century, the world was in turmoil. We were consumed with the aftermath of the global pandemic, the threat of nuclear war, and the climate emergency. Despite it all, we hurried about our lives, expectant that our world would continue as it always has, the indomitable human spirit never wavering. Yet no one considered, with all of the fears we had made by our own hands, that it would be a threat from another world that would bring our society to its inevitable demise, and that for all of our technology, we would be powerless to stop them. What had taken us thousands of years to build would be wiped out in just 17 days. Those who survived record this event as the Harvesting. Episode 5: Rejects. John supported Emma as they exited her home. Trembling, she locked the front door, and then she and John headed to Lisa's Discovery SUV. Miles down the road, after Addie and Emma fell asleep in the back, Lisa broke her silence. "I don't mean to come off as a bitch, but you're going to anyway. Addie's traumatized by what he had to do to Lee. But I won't hesitate if a similar situation arises. You're tough, aren't you?" There was a pause as Lisa thought about this. "No, but I'm a nurse. I'm trained to save lives." "What does Tom do?" asked John. "He's a defense consultant." "Well, that sounds interesting." "I have no idea," said Lisa. "He's not allowed to talk about it." "Cloak and dagger." "If you knew him, you'd know that's far from the truth." "But it fits in with what we've seen lately, doesn't it?" Lisa took a beat. "I really don't know. Tell me about Addie." "Well, he lives in Stokesley," said John. "But he's an only child. His parents are gone. Addie's father was a diplomat to Nigeria, but he's never mentioned his mother. Sometimes he stays with Sam and me for a few days." "I mean with Lee," said Lisa. "Oh, it's not like that. There was a girl he used to see." Lisa paused. "John, Addie just told us that he and Lee were together." "Lee and Addie? They were close, but Lee wasn't much for settling down." "I guess you can hear what you want, or you can listen to what your best friend told you." "Seems that way." "Tell me about Sam and Connor. What are we looking for at your place?" asked Lisa. "It's his birthday. We're having a party and I'm supposed to be there. Or I was, on November the 25th, answered John. "And Sam? Is she your first love?" "Not my first, but my real love, I guess. She's almost too perfect, too good for me," said John. "Maybe you underestimate yourself," answered Lisa. "Didn't you just tell me that I don't know how to listen?" "Well, that's a flaw, but I'm talking about the whole picture." John took a moment to think about this. "Well, now you're just flirting with me." Lisa laughed a little, then braked abruptly. "What the hell is this?" The Discovery came to a stop about 200 metres from a British Army Warrior AFV. The armoured vehicle blocked the road. It was impossible to tell if it were friend or foe, manned or empty. "What do you suppose that's doing here?" wondered Lisa. A little nervously, John replied, "Let's turn around and find another way." From behind the tree line, about 300 metres behind the SUV, about a dozen infected people like Lee stepped out and began to move towards Lisa's Discovery. Some moved more efficiently than others. They had mutated at different rates. Emma and Addie awakened. Addie noticed the horde of infected. "Look what's behind us," he said. "Drive toward the tank," shouted John. The SUV approached the Warrior. The Warrior started its engine in a cloud of smoke. Lisa swerved the Discovery off to the side. The main gun turned towards the SUV. "Get down!" called John. John, Lisa, Addie and Emma ducked and covered their heads inside the Discovery as the tank fired, beyond the SUV. Flashes of gunfire illuminated the vehicle's interior. The sound from the gun reverberated as they held their hands against their ears. After 3 shots, most of the infected lay dead, splattered along the road. The few survivors ambled into the woods. All went silent. John, Lisa, Addie and Emma rose from their hiding positions. They turned around to check that the coast was clear behind them. Through the clearing smoke, they could see the bodies of the slain. As they sat in silence, the warrior's rear hatch opened. The commander, around 50 and wearing a British Army uniform, emerged. John, Lisa, Addie and Emma remained in the Discovery. "Are any of you infected?" called the commander from a distance. John lowered the window and answered, "No, we're all good." The commander began to walk very slowly toward the vehicle, his hand hovering near his sidearm, looking a little trigger-happy. "What's your business?" "We're headed home," said John, "searching for our loved ones."
"Do you know what's happened?"
chipped in Addie. "Yes," said the commander. "The British and American governments fucked the dog and it bit them back." "What the hell does that mean?" asked Lisa. The commander looked at the warrior. "Come to the AFV and I'll tell you what I know. There are no government secrets now because there are no governments." John and Addie helped Emma into the back of the warrior, and then they all clambered in after her. The commander closed the hatch, just in case one of those fuckers comes back for more. The interior of the warrior was typical of armoured personnel carriers. Enough cramped space for about 10 soldiers in the back, 2 seats up front, but fairly uncomfortable. "I'm Tank Commander Winston, and this is Sergeant Williams." Sergeant Williams, a stout, balding man in his late 30s, turned and nodded to the group in the back. They greeted him. "You're quite useful," said Winston. "We've been watching that horde of rejects for 2 days, but we couldn't get a clear shot at them. They've been organising, and you drew most of them out of the woods." "What are these rejects?" asked Lisa. "Dr. Shaw, a scientist we were transporting, was the first to call them rejects. No longer fully human," replied Winston. "Good a term as any, I guess," said Lisa. "What's the date?" asked John. Winston looked to his clock. "I'd say it's year 0, day 18 ATR." "ATR?" asked John. "After the rain," said Winston. "The Christian era has ended." Emma gasped, clutching her crucifix. "What should we do?" asked Lisa. "Avoid rejects and stay in a sealed place if the red rain comes again."
"What are you going to do?"
asked Addie. "Our last order was to hold station." "That means blasting rejects off the fucking planet for the time being," said Williams. "What happened to the government?" asked John. "Well, the last report we received before losing comms was that this is worldwide. All governments are gone." Lisa gasped. Emma sobbed. Addie nodded his head knowingly. "Who did this? Someone's responsible," said John. "Not so much who as what," said Winston. "Meaning?" said Lisa. Winston pointed to the sky. An otherworldly howl broke the conversation. "The fuck was that?" "Most likely the reject dogs," said Winston, "but you're safe in here."
"Strangest dogs I ever heard,"
muttered Addie. "Dogs that came in contact with the red rain have mutated into canine rejects," explained Winston.
"Is that what's happened to people?" asked Addie, "when they came in contact with the red rain?"
"That's what we surmise." Outside the safety of the warrior, 4 reject dogs feasted on the freshly dead reject humans. The dogs snarled at one another while gorging. Inside, Sergeant Williams watched the reject dogs on his scope. He shot. "Clear shot! Splat, you bastards!" "That's your signal," said Winston. "Time for you to move on while it's safe." "That's safe?" asked Emma.
"As safe as it's going to be for the foreseeable future," said Winston.
He stood and hit the release button. The rear hatch opened. John, Addie, Lisa and Emma emerged. Winston shook John's hand, squatting at the back of the AFV. The others rushed for the Discovery. "Good luck getting home," said Winston. "I hope you find your loved ones." "Is there any way we can contact you?" asked John. "We'll be here blasting rejects until we run out of ammo, fuel and rations." Winston climbed into the warrior and closed the rear hatch. As John got into the SUV, the AFV moved to allow the Discovery to pass. The group remained quiet, absorbing what they learned.
"That wasn't much help,"
said Addie.
"So, we're on our own," said John.
"I guess so," responded Lisa. "I'll drop you at John's place, and then I'm going to mine." "Why did he point to the sky?" asked Emma. Did he mean that this is God's fault?
He's pissed about what's happened, said Addie. And he doesn't know who to blame, added John.
Emma turned and looked out the window. Tears welled up. Addie looked in her direction. He wanted to comfort her. As John, Lisa, Addie and Emma continued along the motorway, they saw a city burning in the distance.
Out on the rig, I watched a documentary, said Addie, about what would happen to the planet if every person died.
What was the conclusion? Asked Lisa.
Nature would take back the planet, but that would take thousands of years.
What about the technology we have in place? Wondered John.
All power stations would shut down, and dams and skyscrapers would collapse. The last man-made objects to survive would be in space.
Lisa slowed to look at the burning city. They were far enough away to be safe, but close enough to see that an oil refinery had set the mid-sized city aflame.
They also said a modern city couldn't burn, said Addie.
Guess they were wrong, replied John.
Voyagers 1 and 2 would continue out into deeper space, and the robots on Mars and other planets would be there until the end of time, or until the universe implodes.
Far above, a black spacecraft drifted in orbit. It was hard to make out its contours against the blackness of the void. The obsidian craft seemed to be enormous, but none of those in the car could see it. Lisa steered around another abandoned vehicle in the road. Let's get to John's home.
We're only about 20 minutes away, said John. Probably an hour, though, since this happened.
At John's house, Kelly grasped the remains of Tiffany with a long set of barbecue tongs. She wore a bandana across her lower face and a pair of Sam's swimming goggles. She took the tiny creature to the garbage bin just outside the kitchen door and dropped the body into it. It landed with a thud. Tiffany's remains were covered in reddish-orange gunk. Suddenly, Kelly heard a noise. "Who's there?" A human form shrouded in darkness began to approach. "Sam? John? Who's there?" repeated Kelly. A battery-powered motion-sensing light out on the driveway backlit the figure. It was shaped like Joanne. "Oh, is that you, Joanne? But thank God I've been alone since I woke up yesterday. No one's around. I went over to Padraig's, but he wasn't home, so I came back." The figure slowly approached. Kelly grew more panicked, but tried to hide it. "Yeah, hey, Joanne, there's plenty of wine if you want a glass. I'm going inside. I'll pour one for you." Joanne, now a reject, slowly approached Kelly on the pavement near the garbage bins. She wore one earring, but the other had been ripped through her frayed ear. Dried reddish-orange blood had caked onto that side of her face and splattered down the front of her white dress, which was also despoiled by other bits of garbage and grime. Kelly rushed inside, locking the door. The room was dark, barely lit by the motion detector lights from the driveway. Kelly breathed, trying to quiet her panic. There was a crash as Joanne broke the glass of the kitchen door. She reached inside, her arm bloodied from the broken glass. Thick, reddish-orange blood splattered the floor. Joanne twisted the lock and opened the door. Kelly grabbed the full wine bottle. "Joanne, what do you want?" she said. "I'll give you whatever you need." The reject Joanne approached. She bared her teeth, and her jaw snapped. Her irises were bloodshot, almost inhuman. Lights from outside swept across the room as a vehicle pulled into the drive. Distracted by the lights, Kelly took her eyes off Joanne, who lunged at her. In a panic, Kelly took a wild swing at the reject Joanne with the wine bottle, and missed. On the backswing, Kelly stumbled, knocking over the camera tripod. The camera crashed to the floor. Kelly landed beside the camera. Joanne came closer. "What's wrong with you, Joanne?" pleaded Kelly. The reject Joanne screamed while she made another lunge, her arms reaching out to grab Kelly's throat. Kelly swung the wine bottle again, this time hitting reject Joanne with a glancing blow. Joanne fell to the side. As Kelly tried to stand, Joanne regained her balance and grabbed at Kelly's legs, pulling her back down. Kelly landed heavily on her front. The reject Joanne climbed on her back and began to hit her with wild, uncontrolled strikes.
Joanne, get the fuck off me, bitch!
With all of her might, Kelly pushed up as the reject Joanne shifted her position. Joanne fell back, and Kelly was able to turn over. She reached for the wine bottle. This time, she hit Joanne full force, the bottle smashing against her skull. Joanne went limp. She lay on the floor, blood running from a large gash on her right temple. Kelly stood over her, still holding the smashed bottle, as John, Lisa, Addie, and Emma entered. Wine cascaded across the floor.
"Holy fuck!"
shouted John.
"Are you okay, Kelly?"
asked Addie. Kelly wiped her eyes.
I have no idea what came over her. She tried to kill me.
Kelly then noticed Lisa and Emma. She pulled herself together as best she could.
You have new friends, it seems.
"We do,"
answered Addie. "This is Lisa and Emma. We joined up with them in Scotland after whatever's happened," answered John. Lisa, Emma, and Kelly exchanged awkward greetings. Addie then spotted the toppled video camera. As he bent down to pick it up, he noticed a child's shoe under the table. He picked up both and turned to John.
"John?"
"That's Connor's shoe," said John. "From his favourite pair." John took the shoe and camera from Addie. He stared at them for a brief moment.
"Maybe the camera recorded something?" wondered Addie.
I just don't want to see that,"
said Emma.
"I do,"
replied John. "I need to know." John placed the camera on the table. He opened the small screen. Everyone other than Emma gathered around him. He pressed play, and the video of Connor's birthday party began. A large, red entity came into frame, moving toward Connor, who now sat alone at the table. This is the end of Season 1, Cycle 1. It also marks the end of the full pilot episode of the TV series script. Watch out for another 5 episodes in Season 1 of The Harvesting. A Messflix production. Written by M.E. Ellington and Stephen Stiefel. Narrated and produced by Jonathan Truman.